And thank you to everyone to join us for today's webinar. My name is Beatrice Schulter. I'm the director of RESI, the Swiss Network for Education and International Cooperation. And we regularly organize these webinars, which we call OROS, Online RESI Open Space. And it's an open space because it's a space that we reserve for our members to propose an interesting topic or a project or something that I would like to discuss with peers around the world. So I'm very happy to welcome you all. Thanks for coming, and please be prepared to participate in this event. We are going to have a presentation, but we're also going to have a lot of exchange, discussion, possibilities for you to ask questions and also to exchange with peers in smaller groups. So this is what is expecting you. I want to present Stephanie Ensle. She is from Vivamos Mejor, and she is the one who filled the space of today's OROS. So she worked for Caritas and for Caritas Switzerland before, and also for GIZ, for programs in Latin America mainly, but also in Somaliland. And she's been working for Vivamos Mejor, our member organization, since 2021, as a responsible for the program in Colombia. And in that function, she has also been overseeing the implementation of the impact study that we are going to discuss and learn about today. So thank you very much, Stephanie, for filling the space, and we're looking forward to the exchange.
Stephanie, I give you the floor, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. You should be able to see that now. I'm also setting the time to avoid to talk too much. Okay. So before I start talking about the RCT impact evaluation on vocational education and training and youth empowerment, I want to give a very, very brief introduction to Vivamos Mejor. Vivamos Mejor so far is working in Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Colombia, and like 1 year ago also in Brazil. We are mainly working, or not mainly, we're working on the two topics on education on the one hand and on water and nutrition on the other hand. In Colombia, so far, we are like only working in the education field, and this is where we divide into two subtopics, which is preschool education with children, and the other one is youth empowerment and vocational education and training. And in the frame of those projects, we were doing this RCT. This impact evaluation took place in Bogota, but we're also working in Medellin and mainly in very fragile contexts with highly vulnerable young adults, very high crime, unemployment rates, high unemployment rates. I said that already, with a youth which lack soft skills, which are required on the formal market, which show behavioral problems, and so on. The RCT we are presenting today is the result of the Impact NADL Award, which we have won, and this is the second time we have won that already. We did another impact evaluation, not an RCT, but an impact evaluation in 2017 in the topic of preschool education. And there we also won this impact award. We're proud of that. This is why I'm mentioning it. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so what are we doing? In our program, Bridges to Working Life, we are working on this combined approach, which is vocational education and training, and we call it youth empowerment. Youth empowerment consists of soft skills training, psychosocial support, peace building activities, and job placement. This is the whole package, and this is like the heart of the impact study. Youth empowerment also includes the sensitization of entrepreneurs, parent awareness, and the mitigation of individual barriers. But this is in like below, this is not what we were examining. Like the project and the study is about the vocational training and the youth empowerment. That's, I think, very important to know. Okay, so now to the question, and I think here I hope I'm already tackling some of your expectations or the questions you were putting in the chat. Why did we do an RCT from an organizational perspective? We are not doing like the classic project evaluations. We do that, but it's not like with every 3-year project we do that. And for reasons like budget, like resource, but also the use of it, we think if you do evaluations, you also need to have a process to learn, to incorporate this in next projects. And this requires a lot of resources as well. But we do monitor very closely, and we can confirm that we, of course, reach targets in the log frames and so on. But we wanted to know more about our projects on a larger scale, and not only on the projects, but on the program itself, right? And so, like with the experience we had from our first impact study, we said we would like to repeat that on an even more professional level and validate the approach that we are applying. We wanted to have a proof of impact. Like everybody else, we think we're doing the right thing. We think that it's good what we do, but to really do like evidence-based programming, well, it's one of the methods you can apply to do impact evaluations, or even more an RCT. Once we took this decision, we also realized that within science, there is a knowledge gap. There is a lot of knowledge about vocational education and training in international cooperation, but there's very little about vocational education and training and youth empowerment, and especially in Latin America, and nothing in Colombia. So we had this scientific background that gave us the go. And like with this goal in mind, to be able to do evidence-based programming, and even further to formulate evidence-based policy recommendations. Then, like next step, we were wondering what kind of impact study we want to do. As I already mentioned, it's not an evaluation, it's an impact study, and we wanted to like have the gold standard. And if you look into science, this is the RCT. And especially since 2019, when the Duflo team won the Nobel Prize in economics for randomized controlled trial studies. We also realized that being able to prove that it's right what you're doing, and doing evidence-based programming is, of course, donor attractive. It attracts fundraisers if you can say, or if you can prove from a very scientific perspective that you are that you reach high impact. It also strengthens the North-South research partnership. We already knew that from the very first impact study. And this is it was for us a very new network that was opening, which we can profit from, but moreover, the partner organization with which we did this study. So, and from an organizational perspective, to do an impact study, you have to have a feasible match. You cannot do impact studies with every kind of project. You need a certain number of participants so that you can group these participants. I will come to that later. And well, that's one of the limitations that many face, besides the costs and time. But like for the design of the study, you also have to have some certain requirements. Okay. Now, if we go to the scientific perspective for a randomized controlled trial study, we want to measure impact. And we want to know if the approach works for the target group, right? This is the big goal for everybody that is doing impact evaluations. What you can see here on the graph is like the first small green line, and then you have a first cut, that's the intervention, and the blue line is like the project, right? This is what we are monitoring. This is the project. This is what we can see. This is the log frame with baseline, the log frame with end line. What we usually don't know is the green line, which is called the counterfactual. And this is the state of the world that the program participants would have experienced in the absence of the program, right? And this is, if you don't have, I don't know, if your project is reaching 300 young adults, usually you're not measuring another 300 young adults, what happens to them? So what we can see in the red, like this red part on the right, is the impact evaluation, right? This small part between the blue and the green line, this is what we are going to measure. Now, how do we do that? That's the difficult and resource-intense part. In the real world, it's not possible to observe this counterfactual. So what we have to do is to mimic the counterfactual, and we have to run experiments. And this is where randomization is coming, is coming into account. How do you randomize? Excuse me, I cannot put that forward. Now, the randomization. If you can randomize, or if you randomize, then there is no difference between the two groups except the program, right? You have two groups which are exact, or you have one group which is exactly the same, which has exactly the same preconditions, and you split them like randomly into two. Then you should have two equal groups. And this is where the experiment starts. So then any difference that subsequently arises can be attributed to the program. This is what you see on the right in the graph with the people, right? The part on the top is, well, first of all, you have the circle with all, you split them into two. Then you have the intervention on the above level, and on the other level, there you have the control group. This is what you do when you randomize. So randomized controlled trials help or give you the ability to compare the effectiveness of a new intervention against what would have happened if nothing had changed. And this is the most credible method to estimate the impact of a program. Usually, when you look at the green circles on the right side, in the lower part, you have the general evaluation, and these general evaluations can answer descriptive, normative, and cause and effect questions, right? That's the big green circle. Then you have the program evaluations, which are basically the subset of evaluations that have to do with programs or policies, or like generically interventions, like on a larger scale. Then you have the impact evaluations. They are like a subset of program evaluations. And then you have RCTs. And then just to, I repeat myself, but I think that's very important to as a takeaway, RCTs randomize. And this is the big difference, right? We can mimic the real world. And I'm going back to this slide. Keep that in mind. Yeah, the blue line and the green line. And what we do is the impact evaluation. And we start like a human experiment to really see what's the impact of our intervention, which we usually don't if we don't randomize from the very, very beginning of an intervention. Okay, that's the first part. I'm checking the time again. And Nadine, I think I was okay with the time. And in the second part, I will talk about the study design, the results, and the learnings.
Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Okay, I realized that this is something you're interested in, right? That's the design and the setting of the study. Before I go to the design, I want to quickly mention what was the setting. So there was the Fundación Apoyar, that's our implementing partner in Colombia, in Bogota. They are with this organization, we are implementing labor market or excuse me, Spanish, like VET project since more than 10 years. They had the experience of doing or implementing impact studies, because we did the first impact study also with them. That made it a bit easier, because this is also, not everybody can do that. The scientific backstopping was from the Uni Lausanne. This is where the PhD was based, and the Universidad de los Andes, it's a university in Bogota. And both universities, they helped us to do the research design, and the PhD from the Uni Lausanne, she was executing the study. There was Vivamos Mejor as like the implementer from Switzerland. And then we had the financing from DEZA through NADEL. NADEL was also doing kind of a scientific backstopping, and they also backstopped the other organization which got funded from the Impact Award. Okay, now regarding the design, and I'm trying once I'm explaining, also trying to talk about the questions that you already made, because I think many of those questions are tackling this slide. So we had, well, I'm going from right down to the parts above in the slide. Before going to design, I would quickly want to mention the timeline. We started with a baseline in January 2019, and the whole implementation or the whole study took place until the end of 2021. So from the beginning of 2019 until the end of 2019, there was a training phase of 1 year. Then in 2020, COVID hit us and made us very nervous. We almost got in panic, because nobody knew how this will influence the study. So instead of doing the midline in November, we added another like COVID midline in August 2020. Then we did like the regular midline in November 2020, and towards the end of 21, the end line. It took us almost 1 year, 2020, to resume, to write, to merge the results, to make them understandable, available for non-scientific, scientific audience. That was a very that was a bit more exhausting than that we thought at the beginning. So year of the time that it needed. Okay, now the design. So the research question was, does combining vocational education with youth empowerment lead to better quality jobs than traditional vocational education for marginalized youth? So you remember the slide I was showing before with the randomization of the groups. What we did was a random allocation of 300 young adults into 3 groups. The first one is the treatment group, which received vocational training and youth empowerment. The second one, which was the treatment group that was receiving only vocational education and training. And the third one, the untreated group. This is where all the ethical questions arise, right? To reduce those ethical questions or doubts, we did a randomization via public lotteries. So all of those young adults knew that they are part of a study, that they could be part of one of those groups. That was like the public lottery, the big glass bowl, and we were sorting out papers with the names, and so they were allocated and everybody knew what is going to happen. But of course, by then it was not possible to communicate that there will be the possibility after 3 years for the control group. This is tough, and this is also especially tough for the team on site, and that's learning. We knew that, and we were trying to support them, but this is and stays like a difficult task. The data that we were collecting were standardized surveys and telephone interviews every 3 months. And the variables we were collecting, or the data on the variables, were income and labor market participation, mental health variables, and demographic characteristics. That was, I hope this answers the question regarding selection and survey methods and control group. There was also a question regarding data security. We did the survey still with written. There was no, we didn't use tablets by then. Today we do that differently. And the data was transferred to Excel data sheets with the highest data security. We could deliver these dates over the PhD with us, and I think that's some confidential data. Regarding the attrition rate, that was below 4%. That is very low for RCTs. Usually it's almost, you can accept attrition rates up to 15 or 20%. And this attrition rate can at least partly explained by a very transparent selection and allocation to the different treatment groups. And also of the proximity of the implementing project team to the participants. When we go to those groups, the first group, the treatment group, out of the 193 completed successfully their VET course and the project. Within the treatment group, which was receiving only vocational education and training, it was only 59 of 100, which is almost a third less. And for us, that is a very strong indication about how important the psychosocial support, the soft skills training is for the young adults, for the young, vulnerable, or marginalized adults. So now we are coming to the results, and I don't want to rush, but I think I will go a bit further because I felt that you were more interested in the method, also learnings and so on. So we were controlling, or we were checking for mental health, and here the results were that the combined approach fostered the mental health of the young people and protected them from the negative effects of mental stress of the pandemic. And more general, the youth empowerment program gave them more mental resilience during extreme stress. What you see on the graphs, the peaks, this is the extreme stress phase. The blue bar is the time where they were in training. Afterwards, you see that COVID was coming, so extreme stress phase. And the lowest peak, the red line, this is the youth empowerment program. So they were less stressed than the others. Towards the end of the study, those lines go together, and this means that in the not extreme stress phases, we can't find an effect, but for extreme stress, and this is of course what we take to other contexts. So if you're vulnerable, you are very often exposed to extreme stress situations, and due to this, or based on those results, we expect those young adults to be able to cope better with other extreme stress situations. Regarding earnings and labor market participation, so the combined project clearly improved the overall incomes of the participants. This is the green line you can see on the right hand. where it says like the continued green line, this is the combined approach with the highest earnings. Also interesting is that those higher incomes come from the formal and the informal market. So that means the young adults earn more in the formal and in the informal sector. And also interesting is that if you compare only VET versus the control group, only VET has almost no effect on earnings. And this is what confirms the scientific studies or the knowledge that we had already. So we're not surprised about that. We also made a cost-benefit analysis that was quite challenging. And here the Youth Empowerment Program provides high returns on earnings over 10 years. This is it's maths, it's a calculation we did. And the costs versus benefits are 10 times higher compared to only VET. This is what we have already seen, like in the scientific papers before, that only VET doesn't make that vulnerable young adults benefit from these programs. Just considering checking the time. Okay.
Stephanie, don't worry for the time. We have time, so don't stress.
Okay, very good, because yeah, I don't want to run. When we come to the recommendations, or what is it that we extract out of those findings? It is, first of all, that vocational training programs should be complemented with youth empowerment to improve the impact and promote the well-being of vulnerable youth. We speak only about vulnerable or marginalized young adults. This is not applying to young adults with socioeconomic backgrounds in, like, let's say, middle class, higher class. This is for vulnerable youth. A second recommendation is that job training interventions should not be limited to standardized cognitive or technical skills, but should also focus on psychological and socio-emotional skills. It's a bit repetitive, but I think it's so important that we wanted to re-mention it. And this is going a little bit towards the health sector, that mental health programs to support at-risk youth should be strengthened and receive more funding. What we see in the context where we work is that, like, the public service to mental health services is very weak or non-existent, or very often, especially if you are in an extreme stress situation, you just don't have access, or you have a very, very long waiting line. And if you have a problem right now, an extreme stress situation, it's not possible to wait 6 months. And here we really make the statement to expand mental health services. Like, as the final, like the big result is that comprehensive interventions prove to be more effective as a strategy. Now, maybe some of you think, well, we knew that, and we apply this kind of programs and projects since many years because we are convinced. But for us, it was very important to have this proof. And we did that over 3 years with 300 young adults. And this is, well, already going to the next slide. This is learning for us, and we hope that this can be used. I need my papers here, and this is. We hope that these results are used for further evidence-based policy recommendations, for evidence-based programming, not only within Vivamos Mejor. We consider ourselves, based on those proof of impact that we have on both programs, for the preschool and also for vocational education and training, an evidence-based organization. This helped us to validate and fine-tune our approach. And And it contributes, of course, to knowledge acquisition and internal learning, but this is a bit more on the inside, right? On the other hand, we think that, well, we close a study gap. It's not that we think, we are closing a study gap. And this is providing basis to use in other contexts, right? The study results show options to increase the effectiveness through the inclusion of youth empowerment programs. So this is a fact. And for us, it confirms and it gives us like also the self-esteem to say we will scale to other contexts and projects. Evidence-based policy recommendations and networking. If you want to do policy recommendations or contribute to this dialogue, we think that an evidence-based result is much more worth it than a non-evidence-based result. So based on that, I think you all got this policy brief that we were elaborating. We made a very big event in Bogota where we brought together different stakeholders to publish those results. And we keep going in the dissemination of those results. Now, when it comes to the challenges and the learnings, well, some of you asked those questions already regarding the fairness of selection. I think at the very beginning of a study, I'm not sure if there is a much fairer way to do that. There is always somebody in the control group. We were giving our best and did that in the most transparent way that we think is possible with all the advisory from our scientific universities background, which had, of course, much more experience in that. A challenge was the tracking and the monitoring of the young people. It was a timeline of 3 years. And many of those young people just, I don't know, they had other things in mind, of course, and this is fully understandable, but they changed telephone numbers, social media profiles, and so on. And it was hard to keep them going. There is a very normal lack of interest in participating in long-term processes. Then after the young adults have finished their training, they started their work on the formal labor market. So they had working hours which were not that which were not perfect for our surveys anymore, or we couldn't reach them, or we had to do that at night or in the evening hours, which made, well, that was a challenge for the team. And as already mentioned, the paper survey versus digital, the paper survey was, that's so much paper that you're creating, and you have to tackle the data to Excel sheets. This is something we wouldn't do anymore. But it was not possible to change in the middle of the study. So we kept going with a paper survey, but there are ways to do that much better and easier in a digital way. Our learnings, you need to have a coordination person at the partner. This is not something you do during your daily business. So we had one person that was like a full-time equivalent, almost full-time, I think, for the whole time, that was responsible for the surveys, for the data collection, and to keep track with the young adults. The budget planning for the control group in a future project. This is something we didn't do from the very beginning. We were very happy that we could fundraise money to offer to the control group that they could be part of the project, but we didn't know at the beginning. And this is something in the future that we did differently. Then, because of the lack of interest of this long-term process, we did raffles to make the young adults stay. But that was not enough. We had to raise the budget because they were like not satisfied with that anymore. It needed to be more to really keep them going. It was such a long process. So the incentives needed to grow. And then, as in many processes, like to anticipate time load, we did budget for the PhD, for the partner, for us, but for example, this whole year of data interpretation and so on, there was not enough budget. We thought it would be less time to do that. And you also made the question regarding resources. We almost spent like 100,000, a bit more USD for this study, like incorporating what the partners spend, our time, resources, PhD, and so on. So I think that's an important note as well. Yeah, and that was it. That was it. Thank you very much.